Get ready, because today we're going to look at 5 of the worst mistakes writers make when writing female characters. These problems not only make your characters come off as shallow, dull, or annoying, but they also hurt your overall story. So you want to avoid these mistakes, and what we're going to do today, we're going to look at each mistake, talk about why it sucks, and I'll give you some examples. In some cases, they might be bad examples that illustrate the issue. In others, they may be good examples that solve the problem. Either way, we're going to have some fun. But before we go any further, here's your spoiler warning. The ones in red contain the heaviest spoilers, and yes, I will be spoiling the new Snow White movie today. I know it's going to break a lot of hearts, but it needs to be done. Anyway, the first reason your female characters suck is that you're not treating them like human beings. Sometimes when writers draw up a female character, they focus so much on the idea of female and how the character represents that idea and what it all means, but they neglect to explore the character as an actual human being with flaws, desires, motivations, and fears. Here's the thing. If you want to tell a great story, you have to tell a human story. That means to show the character as both good and bad, and their choices have to lead to honest outcomes. If you fail to do this, the character will feel more like a walking thesis statement rather than a fleshed out person. So when crafting your character, don't ask yourself, how do I write a female character? Instead, ask yourself, how do I write a character who happens to be female? Then explore desires and motivations, flaws and strengths, likes and dislikes, impulses and fears, and finally their aspirations and backstory. Those are what make us human, and they make characters engaging. I'll give you an example. Let's say we want to write a character who craves acceptance and validation. This character could be a man, somebody like Patrick Bateman from American Psycho, or the character could be a woman like Elizabeth Sparkle from the movie The Substance. She's an aging Hollywood actress whose career and fame are slipping away, and in order to reclaim her past glory, she injects herself with a mysterious serum that creates a younger version of herself. This serum forces her to play by a twisted set of rules, and she takes desperate measures in order to stay young and successful. Now me, obviously I'm not an aging Hollywood actress, and yet I found Elizabeth to be an engaging, relatable, and compelling character. Why? Because her journey explores what it means to be human. It explores harsh truths about self-worth and the perils of chasing validation. And when a story seeks truth, that's when audiences care. We may not be able to relate to life as a Hollywood actress, but we definitely understand what it feels like to shoot ourselves in the foot while pursuing a goal. And that's what draws us into the story. Second reason your female characters suck is a lack of appropriate obstacles. Good conflict is all about balance. It's about creating a character with certain traits and skills, then dropping them into situations that put those skills to the test. Or, in other cases, you might have a character who is initially outmatched by the conflict, but then they try, fail, and learn to overcome it. What you don't want, however, is empty conflict. This is when you fail to challenge the character, or you give them weak obstacles that don't encourage growth. Or, worse yet, maybe you get overprotective and bail the character out of trouble with lazy writing. To be fair, this mistake can happen with any type of character, but it's been popping up a lot with female ones in recent years. Often writers will fixate on making the character physically powerful or instantly successful, and then they have them steamroll every obstacle without a sweat. There's no training, no trial and error, no devastating setbacks, and it's a shame because some of the best female characters are ones who use their smarts, social skills, or resourcefulness to solve problems. In a perfect world, we would see a lot more of this. But sadly, we don't live in a perfect world. We live in a world where this past weekend I did my duty as a YouTuber and went to see Snow White. Now, I was hoping it would be hilariously bad like Catwoman or The Room, but instead I got 110 minutes of water torture. This movie is a suffocating, disjointed mess, and one of the major problems is that Snow White herself faces no meaningful conflict. Now, the story opens with her mother dying, and then her father marries an evil queen who takes over the kingdom and steals everyone's potatoes. From there, we jump ahead to when Snow White is an adult, and she's portrayed as this considerate, warm-hearted princess, which are qualities we can work with. But unfortunately, they don't help her solve problems in satisfying ways. For example, at one point, the evil queen blackmails a guy into killing Snow White, and in the very next scene, he just decides not to. That's it. Snow White doesn't talk her way out of it or trick the guy or anything like that. He just holds back because the script says so. Then, during the movie's final showdown, if you could call it that, the evil queen sends her guards to kill Snow White. How does Snow counter this attack, you ask? Does she carry out a clever strategy? Does she rally her allies to her side? Does she exploit a weakness? Well, no, none of that. Instead, Snow White calls one of the guards by his first name. That's it. That's her superpower. She remembers a guy's name. This is what blows open the entire story. It motivates him to commit treason, then the evil queen destroys herself, everyone lives happily ever after, and I leave the theater as fast as I can. Third reason your female characters suck is that you're over-comparing them to male characters. By the way, over-comparing isn't a word. I just made it up, probably because Snow White gave me brain damage. But anyway, look, there's nothing wrong with telling a story that explores the differences between ladies and gentlemen. When done well, this can lead to engaging and insightful stories that enhance our understanding of people and how they relate to each other. However, when done poorly, it can make the writing look insecure, like it's desperately trying to force a certain belief or point of view. The first episode of She-Hulk reeks of this insecurity. We get introduced to our main character, Jennifer Walters, and after we learn she's a superhero, we get an extended flashback that shows how she got her powers and how she immediately mastered them. What makes it even more laughable is that the Hulk himself talks about how it took him 15 years to get a handle on his own powers. Then, within 15 minutes, Jennifer outshines him. Now, what's the problem here? Well, it's the fact that there's no room for growth. She-Hulk attempts to blend action and comedy, and it fails in both areas because it focuses so hard on comparing its protagonist to her male counterpart. Instead of allowing her to grow by making funny mistakes and learning to pick herself up, she masters everything in minutes and repeatedly talks down to her cousin who's trying to help her. Then, and this is the worst part, at the end of the first episode, we jump back to the present day, and the show hints that her powers are going to cause some problems. When I was watching this, I expected a tragic or funny payoff, but instead, when she's in court, a supervillain attacks, and she calmly transforms into She-Hulk before taking care of the villain. And that's it. Now, to be fair, in the next episode, she loses her job because of this, and for a few minutes it's played up as a total bummer, but then boom, she gets another job that sets the plot in motion. Fourth reason your female characters suck is that you're ignoring the feminine. While you certainly can create someone who's tomboyish or has a masculine personality, you don't want your female characters to be completely devoid of female traits, qualities, and interests. Make sure to mix in at least a couple. Have them display a warm personality, or gush about their dog, or crave ice cream, or show concern for strangers, or collect shoes. There are tons of possibilities. You just need to figure out which ones fit your character best. One recent example is Lucy from the Fallout TV series. This is a character who could have been just another badass chick in a sci-fi story, but instead she's incredibly feminine. She has an upbeat attitude, voices concern for others, and is so polite it's hilarious.
Excuse me! Hi! May I approach?
Lucy adds a breath of fresh air to a genre that often relies on dark heroines. And the best part is that in addition to being feminine, she also embodies a number of neutral or masculine traits as well, like being persistent, resourceful, and willing to firmly stand by her beliefs. Another thing worth mentioning here is physical appearances. In most cases, women will put more effort into their appearance than men. This means that if you're introducing people in your story, you'll typically want to describe female characters in greater detail. Don't make it awkward, but devote some word count to things like clothing style, accessories, makeup, hairstyles, and so on. Finally, the fifth reason your female characters suck is a lack of emotional decision making. Compared to their male counterparts, female characters will typically weigh emotions more when making decisions. And this is good for storytelling. It can lead to compelling internal conflicts as well as surprising choices. Unfortunately, however, many writers ignore this. Instead of injecting emotion into the decision-making process, they keep things logical for the sake of simplicity or just to keep the plot on track. Now, if you follow this channel, you've heard me say that the best stories get messy in a good way. This means that characters face pressure and make surprising decisions that push the plot in exciting new directions. One of the best examples of this comes from the movie Aliens, specifically the director's cut. Early on, Ripley learns that her daughter is dead, and this, coupled with her experiences from the first movie, leaves her traumatized. She then goes on a mission to eliminate the xenomorphs, and during the mission she encounters an abandoned little girl named Newt. This scenario allows Ripley to embrace her maternal side once again, and the two characters bond until Newt gets captured and taken away to her apparent death. This happens just before the planet is set to be nuked from orbit, and the logical move here would be to assume that Newt is dead and just get off the planet. But Ripley ignores the logical move. Her emotions compel her to rush into danger, and it kicks off one of the best final acts you'll ever see in an action movie. Ripley, who's by no means a soldier, ends up rising to the challenge, facing her worst fears and risking her life to rescue the little girl. Emotional decision-making can also create exciting obstacles that make a character's journey more perilous. I already mentioned the substance, and the entire movie is fueled by emotional decisions that lead its main character to tragedy. Now, there are two reasons why this works. First, we understand why Elizabeth makes these bad decisions. She, of course, is motivated by a need to be loved by the masses. Though it's not a healthy mindset, it's an understandable one, and it draws us into her character. Then, second, her bad decisions have appropriate consequences. This is so important. When characters use emotion to make decisions, that should lead to unexpected challenges or punishments. When writing our stories, we need to embrace this. We need to craft honest outcomes. If a character faces a dilemma and they allow emotion to shape their decision, those emotions should also shape the story. They should redirect it in a creative new direction. So I hope this helps. Question of the day: what female character mistake do you hate the most? Is it one of the ones I listed here today, or is it another one entirely? Let us know in the comments section below. Thank you for watching. If you want to support the channel, please pick up a copy of any one of my books and be sure to leave reviews on Amazon. The Half Murders is great if you like horror stories. It's about a woman and her daughter who enter a haunted house. They get chopped in half, and for them, the nightmare is only beginning. Also, be sure to check out my other videos, like, share, and subscribe. Maybe support me on Patreon. And as always, remember to keep on writing.